July 9th, 1958, Lituya Bay, Alaska. 3 fishing boats rocked gently beneath the Alaskan dusk. Then the earth convulsed. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake unleashed a landslide. 40 million cubic meters of mountain collapsed into the water, gone in seconds, plunging nearly a kilometer at highway speeds. The result was the tallest wave ever recorded on our planet. But how could one night reshape science, erase entire forests, and leave scars still visible today? To answer that, we need to start with the moment the world tilted. At 10:15 p.m., the Fairweather Fault ruptured beneath the mountains ringing Lituya Bay. A violent magnitude 7.8 earthquake split the ground, sending shock waves through the fjord and shaking loose an entire mountainside. On the northeast wall above Gilbert Inlet, more than 40 million cubic meters of rock and earth broke free. The mass, equal to the volume of 16,000 Olympic swimming pools, began a near vertical plunge from an elevation of 914 meters. Gravity and seismic force combined, hurling the debris downslope at nearly 160 kilometers per hour, faster than a car on the highway. In seconds, what had been solid mountain became a roaring avalanche, accelerating toward the water below. The force of the rockfall was so immense that the sound echoed across the bay and could be heard 50 miles away. As the mass hit the inlet, it struck not just open water, but the snout of the Lituya Glacier, tearing away a swath of ice and mixing rock, sediment, and meltwater into a single violent impact. The energy released in that instant was measured in the millions of tons, enough to displace an enormous volume of water and set the entire bay in motion. The geometry of the fjord trapped the force, amplifying it. In the first moments after the quake, Lituya Bay was transformed from a tranquil anchorage into the site of a geological collision unmatched in modern memory. The chain reaction had begun, and the water itself would bear the next blow. A single, unimaginable force burst from the heart of Gilbert Inlet. Where rock and glacier had collided, water exploded upward in a column that seemed to defy nature. In the blink of an eye, the surge transformed into a wall of water so vast it erased the boundary between sea and sky. The wave climbed the opposite mountainside, tearing away ancient spruce and hemlock, stripping soil and stone, and scouring the landscape down to bare bedrock. At its apex, the water reached a height of 524 meters, 1,720 feet, towering above the tallest skyscraper ever built. The scale was almost beyond comprehension. Entire forests vanished in seconds, swept away as if they were nothing more than blades of grass. Confined by the steep walls of the fjord, the energy of the impact could not escape outward. Instead, it rebounded and amplified, forcing the wave to race down the length of the bay at nearly 160 kilometers per hour. For 10 kilometers, the water carried the full momentum of the landslide, flattening everything in its path. The scar left behind, a sharp, barren line etched into the Green Mountains, remains visible on the bay today, a permanent reminder of that unstoppable force. In those first moments, there was no time for human reaction. Only the raw, overwhelming power of water, unleashed by the earth itself. The next instant would decide the fate of everyone anchored in Lituya Bay. Bill Swanson jolted awake as the earth convulsed beneath the Badger. The quiet of Lituya Bay vanished in an instant, replaced by a roar that seemed to come from every direction. Vivian clung to the cabin wall as Bill scrambled to the deck, searching for the source of the chaos. Across the water, the crest of the wave appeared higher than the treetops, blotting out the sky. There was no time to think, only to react. The Badger's anchor chain groaned under the sudden pull as the water beneath them surged upward. Bill felt the deck tilt, then lurch as the waves seized the boat. With a metallic snap, the anchor chain gave way. The Badger was no longer tethered to the bay floor. It was at the mercy of the wave. The boat surged forward, riding the face of the water like a leaf in a storm. The land spit at the bay's entrance, usually a barrier, vanished beneath the wave as the Badger was lifted over it. carried as if on a surfboard. Bill and Vivian clung to each other, bracing against the wheelhouse as the boat crested the spit and dropped into the open ocean beyond. The force of the wave had broken every rule of navigation, but it had also delivered them from certain destruction. In the stunned silence that followed, the couple realized they had survived the impossible, swept from the heart of disaster by the sheer mobility of their boat and the luck of being in motion when everything else was swept away. Howard Ulrich gripped the wheel of the Edrie, his 7-year-old son beside him in the cramped wheelhouse. The roar from Gilbert Inlet grew deafening, and through the windows, a wall of water blocked out the mountains beyond, a moving cliff, rising higher than anything he had ever seen. Instinct took over. Ulrich raced to the anchor winch and released every link of chain, letting the boat swing free. He gunned the engine, pointing the bow straight into the oncoming wave. The Edrie began to lift, not forward but upward, as if the entire bay had turned vertical. The hull shuddered. Ulrich's son clung to the bench, eyes wide, as the boat climbed the face of the wave. For a moment, gravity seemed to vanish. The Edrie rode over the tops of submerged trees, branches scraping the hull, water roaring past the windows. Ulrich fought to keep the engine running, hands white on the throttle. The crest passed beneath them, and the boat dropped hard, slamming back into the churning water. Father and son sat in stunned silence, alive in a world that seconds before had seemed impossible to survive. Orville and Mickey Wagner spent their final moments aboard the Sunmore, anchored closer to the forested shoreline than the other boats that night. When the wave thundered down the length of Lituya Bay, there was no chance to maneuver or escape. The Sunmore, caught in the direct path of the surge, was lifted and hurled inland, carried by water moving faster than any storm could summon. Trees and debris collided with the hull, crushing wood and steel in seconds. The force of impact was absolute, so sudden and overwhelming that the Sunmore was reduced to wreckage almost instantly. Orville and Mickey Wagner were killed where they sat, the violence of the wave leaving nothing to recover. Searchers who later combed the devastated shore found only fragments of the vessel, scattered among the stripped trunks and raw earth. The Wagners became the only fatalities among the anchored boats that night, their loss a stark contrast to the improbable survival of others. In the aftermath, the silence along the shore was broken only by the sound of water draining from the ruined forest, a reminder of how narrow the margin between life and death had become within Lituya Bay. In the days after the wave, teams of geologists and surveyors arrived at Lituya Bay. They documented a sharp, barren trimline running high above the water, where trees and soil had been stripped away in a single sweep. Aerial photographs captured this line cutting across the mountainsides at 524 meters, offering undeniable proof of the wave's reach. For the scientific community, these images were impossible to ignore. Early skepticism gave way to acceptance as measurements from the scar, survivor accounts, and physical modeling all pointed to the same conclusion. A landslide could generate a wave far beyond what standard tsunami models predicted. Reports published by the USGS and peer-reviewed journals confirmed the findings. The Lituya Bay event forced scientists to rewrite their understanding of tsunami hazards, recognizing that landslides could unleash forces once thought unimaginable. Lituya Bay's lesson reaches far beyond Alaska's wilderness. The same forces, unstable slopes, earthquakes, and confined water, exist wherever mountains meet the sea. In 1853, and again in 1936, waves swept through this bay, carving scars high above the shoreline. Scientists now study volcanic islands like Cumbre Vieja in the Canary Islands, where a future flank collapse could send millions of tons of rock plunging into the Atlantic. Hazard models show that waves of unimaginable height can be unleashed not only in remote fjords, but anywhere the right conditions align. The 1,720-foot scar on Lituya's mountainside stands as a warning. The tallest wave ever recorded was not a one-time accident, but part of a pattern that could repeat wherever earth and water are forced together with enough violence. Today, satellite data identifies dozens of unstable slopes worldwide, each capable of sending a mountain into the sea. As coastal populations grow, the risk is real and rising. Nature's extremes are not history. They are a warning. The next impossible wave could strike wherever land meets water. Stay curious and stay prepared.